Welcome folks. In this video we are going to revise biology paper 2 for the year 2018. So we are looking at the paper that was written by the internal. So let's look at the first question from section A. Figure 1.1 and 1.2 shows specialized cells E and F. So specialized cells as cells that now have their specific function. So now we need to identify these cells depending on their appearance. So let's look at question A, Roman number 1. Identify cell F in figure 1.2. So because we have this nucleus here, we can see that these are blood cells, and due to the presence of a lobed nucleus, this is our white blood cell. So we'll say white blood cell. Then if we want to specify, since there are so many white blood cells in terms of the types, so this is a phagocyte. Okay, so now let's move on to question BA, Roman number 2. Which feature in the diagram enables you to identify cell F in A1 above? So the feature that helps us to identify this is it has a lobed nucleus. So this is what we call the lobed nucleus. You can see from figure 1.2. Now let's look at the question B1. Figure 1.1 shows a group of similar cells. Okay, what term is used to refer to such a group of cells? So we want to look at the term that is given to cells that are similar in terms of shape and also functioning. So this forms what we call a tissue. Then Roman number 2 suggests a region in the human body where figure 1.1 is found. So let's look at figure 1.1. So figure 1.1, we can see that this structure G, these are cilia. So we have the cilia. Then cell E, these are ciliated cells. So this kind of cells or structure is found along the trachea or windpipe. Then give one function of the part labeled G. So G, we say D is a cilia. So the function of the cilia is to trap dusty particles. So from the air. So whenever we are inhaling the air may contain unwanted dust particles. Or we can just maybe simplify this answer as it makes or helps the air to be cleaned. It also sweeps the mucus. Is also another function of the cilia. Then let's move on to question C1. State 2 specialized cells found in plants. So there are so many specialized cells that are found in plants. So you just have to consider N2 of your choice. So let's say here we can use the root hair cell. We can also use a palisade. We also have agar cells, we have sponge cells, we have epidermal cells, we have so there are so many cells. Then for question Roman number 2, for one named specialized cell in C1 above, explain its function. So we can get any of the two. So let's say we take root hair cell. So what is the function of root hair cell? So root hair cell is there to absorb water and mineral salts from the soil. So root hair cell absorbs water and mineral salts from the soil. Okay, so let's move on to question 2. So question 2, we have figure 2.0 shows the alimentary canal of a human being. So the alimentary canal, we are looking at the part that is involved in digestion process. So we have structure H, structure J, K, M, then we also have L. Now let's look at the questions. So the first question is, identify the parts labeled H and J. So H, we can see that H is esophagus. Or gullet. Then our J, we have stomach. Then let's look at question B. Explain the functions of the parts labeled K and L in digestion. So let's go back to see our K. K is pancreas. So what is the function of our pancreas in digestion? Then also look at our L is large intestine. So we need also to indicate the function of the large intestines in digestion. So whatever that we do, we need to make sure that our answers must be in line with the digestion. So for K, which is a pancreas, so structure K produces, we say it produces pancreatic juice, which contains enzymes, that completes digestion in small intestines. So the completion of digestion occurs in small intestines. And remember, small intestines is made up of 3 individual parts. There is what we call jejunum, duodenum, and also we have what we call the ileum. So to summarize it, we can just call those collective parts as the small intestine. So that's where the completion of digestion is, and also the absorption of digested food also occurs. Now for structure L, the function of large intestines, this is where the absorption of water and mineral salts occurs. So this is where the absorption of water and mineral salts occurs. Okay, so now let's move on to question C. So question C on figure 2.0, the structure label, the structure where bile is stored with letter X. Roman number 2, hydrochloric acid is produced with letter Y. So if you look at the bile salt is important for emulsification of fats. Now the bile salt is produced by the liver, but it is stored by the gallbladder. So from this structure, we want to label with letter X where we think the bile salt is stored. So the bile salt is stored by the gallbladder. So this structure here. Then for hydrochloric acid, we know that hydrochloric acid is produced in the stomach. So this is where our Y is. Then we also have to look at the functions of the bile salt and as well as the hydrochloric acid in terms of digestion. Then D1, state one metabolic function of the part labeled M. So from this figure, we can tell that the part labeled M is the liver. So we are dealing with the liver. So the liver has so many functions. Now from the functions that we know, we are just required to give one function that we think or we are able to remember. So the functions of the liver includes like it breaks down and stores poisonous substances. So we'll say it breaks down and stores some poisonous substances. So there are so many functions. Like the other function, also the liver stores some fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A and D. Then it also stores some mineral ions like iron, copper, and potassium. Then the other function, it is also used for the process of deamination. There is also detoxification. There is also the process of inspection. So these are some of the metabolic functions of the part labeled M, which is the liver. Then in infants, the liver produces the red blood cells. We know that in older people, the red blood cells are produced by the red bone marrow found in bones. Now let's look at Roman number 2. Describe two ailments which can result when structure M is not functioning properly. So structure M, we are saying this structure is the liver. So we want to look at what we think can be the negative impacts if this structure M is not functioning normally. So the first one, we'll need to look at there is what we call jaundice. So jaundice is the structure, it's a condition where the bile duct closes in such a way that it cannot allow the bile salt to enter the small intestine. So say this is just the blockage of bile duct to prevent the flow of bile salt. So that is whenever we have this condition, then the bile duct is the passage of the tube where the bile salt passes. So the blockage of this may result in not having the bile salt in the small intestines. Then the other condition that we may have here is what we call hepatitis. So hepatitis is just now the inflammation of the liver. So this is just the inflammation of the liver. So the negative impact of this is that the liver can no longer make the bile salt. Remember, bile salt is produced by the liver and stored by the gallbladder. So it is the inflammation of the liver. So we are not saying these are the only ailments. No, there are so many. We also have what we call cirrhosis of the liver, a disease in which now the liver tissue is damaged and scarred. Now let's move on to question 3. So question 3, figure 3.0 summarizes the development process during asexual reproduction in human beings. So here we know that reproduction is the process by which living organisms produces their young ones. So let's look at this, let's study it clearly. So we can see that this structure, this is a sperm cell. We can see that there is a head and a tail. Then if this is a sperm cell, then we have the picture of this structure N. We know that there is a cell that fuses with the sperm cell during the process of fertilization to give us the fertilized egg, which we are going to look at that later. So after these two fuses, this will give us process 1. So let's see how we can summarize this. So from this we can see that if this is a sperm cell, then this should be an ovum. So an ovum is just a female sex cell. Then the process, if an ovum joins with the sperm cell, then the process 1 here, this is what we call fertilization. So fertilization, we know that it mostly occurs in a fallopian tube. Then we can see that now we have cell P. So cell P, this is a fertilized egg, but at this stage we call it a zygote. So from zygote we have embryo, from embryo we have a fetus, then after fetus we have now which unborn baby. Then we can see that we have these two cells. So cell P is just one. So by what process can cell P undergo to produce two cells? So the process number 2 is cell division. Now if we want to specify the cell division that we are looking at here is mitosis, because mitosis has to do with the formation of two new daughter cells. Then meiosis has to do with the production of the gametes. Now let's look at the questions. So question A, Roman number 1, identify the cells labeled N. So N we are saying that is an ovum. Then for P we have zygote. So zygote is just a fertilized egg before cell division. Then name the processes 1 and 2. So process 1 is fertilization because it has to do with the fusion of the ovum with the sperm cell. Process 2 is cell division. So to specify, here we only have mitosis. So mitosis is just the increase in terms of the number of cells. Then suggests the part of the female reproductive organ in which process 1 takes place. So process 1 is fertilization. So in human beings, specify female, the process of fertilization mostly occurs in fallopian tube. Fallopian tube is also known as the oviduct. So if you say oviduct or fallopian tube, the answer is still correct. Then question C, explain what happens at stage R for identical twins to be produced. So here, what you need to know for identical twins is the identical twins comes from one fertilized egg. So for those to be identical, that means that they were fertilized by one sperm. Now during the cell division, when dividing, they divide completely into 2 or more, depends on the number of these identical twins. So if it's 2, they will divide into 2 cells that will be independently. So each cell will start its own cell division and develops into an embryo, and the other will also do the same. So say after cell division, and the cell division we are looking at is the first cell division. So after cell division, the zygote will divide completely and separately into 2 or more balls of cells. The reason why I have said more, sometimes you may have more than two twins, so it depends. Then for question D, describe two situations which can result in infertility and cause process 1 not to take place. So remember, process 1 we said is fertilization. So I want to look at the two situations that we think may hinder the process of fertilization. So the first one we'll look at, let's look at in female. So in female we have what we call blockage of fallopian tube. Then for this is for women. Now for men we may have low sperm count. So these two situations can affect the process of fertilization. Okay, now let's move on to question for figure 4.1 shows muscles and bones of the forearm of a human being. So we have muscle R, muscle T, then we have this bone S and bone U, and also we have two joints. There is this joint here, there is also another joint here. Now let's look at the question. So the question is identify muscle T. So the muscle behind the arm, the forearm, the muscle T, this is tricep. Then for U, bone U, we have ulna. So the radius is on top. So the one on top is radius. And the best way to remember this, sometimes it may affect you, is the ulna is larger in size than the radius, or the radius is always on top of the ulna. Then you can just use the alphabetical. We know that R comes before U. So R on top, then U here. So our U is ulna. Then let's look at B1. What name is given to the pair of muscles T and R? So what is R? We said T is tricep. Then R is bicep. So these two muscles, they work oppositely. If muscle T contracts, then our R will relax. So what do we call muscles that operates in such a manner? So these are known as the antagonistic muscles. Then name one other such pair of muscles in the human body. So the other pair we can use radial muscles and cellular muscles. So these are muscles that are responsible for the size of the pupil. So if someone enters a room where there is dim light, there are changes that we are not aware of that happens. So those changes can be brought by the contraction and the relaxation of these two muscles and vice versa. Now let's go to question C. Label on figure 4.0 where you find a tendon. So what is a tendon? A tendon is just the structure or a part of a muscle where it touches the bone. So from this structure, we want to look at which part do we think is our tendon. So the tendon is always smaller in size. So it can be any here. So this is our tendon. So tendon, just look at it, the parts where the muscle is becoming smaller as it is approaching the bone where it is touching. And these are known as the skeletal muscles because they are muscles that are responsible for the movement of the skeletal system. Then in Roman number 2, we want to look at the pivot joint. So what is a pivot joint? So a pivot joint is just a joint that allows movement in one direction. So we can see that the pivot joint is here. So the best example of the pivot joint, we have what we call elbow joint. So if this is our pivot joint, then here we have what we call ball and socket joint. Ball and socket joint allows movements in all directions or in 3 planes. So let's look at the question D. Give 2 ways in which skeletal muscles of an insect differ from the skeletal muscles of a human being. So let's look at first what type of skeleton is found in insects. So insects have exoskeleton. So it's a kind of skeleton that is found on the outside of the body. Then for human being, we have what we call an endoskeleton, where we have the skeleton found inside the body. Now, let's look at the insect first. So under the insect, the skeleton is outside, the muscles are inside. So in an insect, the muscles are located internally, while in a human being, the muscles are located externally. Externally, we are saying if we have a bone, if this is a bone, the muscles are found only on the external part of the bone. But if we have an exoskeleton like this, if this is the skeleton, the muscles are found inside here. So that is the first difference. So we'll say in insects, muscles are found inside the skeleton, whereas in humans, muscles are found on the outside of the skeleton. So that is the first one. Then the second one, the muscles of insects does not contain the tendon. So muscles of insects does not contain tendon, whereas muscles of human beings has a tendon. So these are the 2 differences that we look at. Then question E, identify the bone labeled S. So let's go to S. So our S here, this is what we call scapula. So we have the scapula. Then we have the clavicle, but let's not look into that. So our S is this scapula. Okay, so now let's move on to question 5. 2 farmers, one with a pure breeding black bull and the other with a pure breeding white cow, decided to cross their cattle. The black bull was crossed with a white cow, and all the resulting offspring had the coat color called Ronnie. So first we need to look at what is meant by Ronnie. So Ronnie in terms of colors, it is a condition where the colors that were involved express themselves. So here we are looking at there is no color that was recessive. The 2 colors were all dominant. So now in such a way that now for this condition we are saying the offspring had the color where there was white and also black. So the white expresses itself, the black also expresses or appeared in the phenotype. So that is what we call a run. Now for A, using letter B for the allele for black coat color and W for the allele for white coat color, show the genotype of the offspring. So the offspring, we are saying they had this run color. So if they had this run color, then remember you just have to use the capital letters for the two alleles. So use capital letter B because it was dominant, and also capital letter W because these two were dominant. How did we know that these two were dominant? Because of the word Ronnie. So whenever you hear or see word Ronnie, just know that you are looking at the phenotype or the point where the two colors have expressed, they have appeared in the phenotype of the offspring. Now, question 2. Explain why neither the bull nor the cow had their coat color expressed in the phenotype of the offspring. So this question is same as why didn't the offspring had one of these colors? Why? So the point is why not having black only or white only? Why having both colors? Why those two colors appeared at once? So the reason is, we have talked of this, is because the two colors were all dominant. So they dominated each other. As a result, these two colors all appeared in the offspring. So say this is because the two colors were all dominant. Were all dominant to each other. Okay, so now let's look at the question B. Using a genetic diagram, predict the chances of the second filia, F2, offspring having a roan color, a roan coat color when the parent black bull was crossed with one of the roan offspring. Okay, so here we are dealing with this. So there is a parent black bull. So here we know the genotype for the parent black bull. Since it was pure, here we are going to have capital letter BB because it was pure and this color was also dominant. Then we are crossing this with a roan offspring, which is a cow here. Now for a roan, remember for a roan we said we are going to have letter B and letter W. So these are now the genotype. We'll consider these as the genotype of, we'll call this as P1, first parental generation. Then we are going to separate these. We have B, then W. So this now becomes gametes of first parental generation. So we can now do the crossing. So we can see that we have pure black bull. Then here we have a roan. Here we have pure black. Then here we have a roan. So say genotype of, now this will be F2 since one of the F1 was used as a parent. Now here the question is now using a genetic predict the chances. So we are looking at the chance. So the chance, we'll take it as a percentage. So we need to find the percentage of having a run. So say chance here. So chance is equal to run. We can see that there is this chance 1, 2. So there is 2 over 4 times 100%. So if we do math, we are going to say that for every fertilization, there was a 50% chance to have an offspring with a roan coat color. Okay, so now let's move on to question 6. So under section B, I just want us to have some discussion. So we'll discuss some of these, then you can put them into paragraphs. So answer any 3 questions from this section. All answers must be in complete sentences and paragraphs. Okay, so let's look at the first question. Let's say you want to select question 6. So question 6, we have A and B. So explain the meaning of each of the following terms. So under good health, so what is good health? Or let's say what is just health? So for someone to have a good health, he or she must have 3 complete health. The first one, there is what we call mental health, where someone is emotionally thinking well. Then the second one, we have what we call social. There is social health. This depends on how good you socialize with people, how you interact with people, how good are you with adaptation with people. For example, if you move from one town or place to another, how good are you to interact with the people that you found in that area? So that is what we call social health. Then the other one is what we call physical. So physical health has to do with physically, where the body is functioning properly. So for someone to have a good health, all these 3 must be in a good condition. So that's what I can share for good health. Then for Roman number 2, we are looking for a disease. Now the disease is just the absence of health. The disease has nothing to, it's not only with the physical. You may be physically fit, but if the mental is not okay, that person is still sick. If the social being is not okay, that person is still sick. So my point is, a disease is just the absence of health. So it's a condition where they may be mentally not okay, socially not okay, or physically not okay, or sometimes all these may not be in proper function. So a disease will just say it's a condition, a state where the body or the organs are not functioning properly. So that is a disease. Then let's look at B, question 6b. For named examples, explain the following types of diseases. So the first one, we have what we call pathogenic diseases. So what are these pathogenic diseases? So the first thing that you need to know is these are diseases that are caused by pathogens. Then what is a pathogen? A pathogen is a microorganism that has the ability to cause a disease. An example, we have what we call Plasmodium. This Plasmodium is a pathogen for malaria. Then we have diseases like cholera, we have dysentery. All these are pathogenic diseases. The other thing that you need to know about these diseases are they are infectious. This means that they can be transmitted from one person to another. So when explaining, so an example, we can use malaria. So malaria is a pathogenic disease. It is caused by a bacterium, what we call Plasmodium. Then the vector for malaria is a mosquito. Then we can also add the signs and symptoms if possible. So these are some of the points that we can give for pathogenic diseases. Then for social diseases, these are similar. They are also transmittable, but for social diseases, a social disease is or can be defined as a venereal disease or communicable infection. So these, they spread through, we can say, sexual intercourse, or these are diseases that is spread through interaction. The more we interact, the more we get this kind of diseases. Then examples of these can be tuberculosis, TB. Then AIDS also is an example of a social disease. So these are what we can say about this. Now let's look at question 7. Let's say we want to choose question 7. So question 7a, describe the mechanism involved in the movement of water molecules from the soil up to the leaves in a plant. So the movement of water, the first one must begin with the absorption. So the absorption, how is water absorbed, or how is water moved from the soil into a plant? So the absorption is done by the root hair cell. That is the first one. So water is absorbed by root hair cell. Then after this, we need to look at the transportation. What vessel transports water from the soil to the leaves? So we have xylem. So you explain about xylem. Then from there, you also have to look at what processes assist in the movement of water from the soil to the leaves. And you need to look at the movement of water is against the gravity. So we have processes like cohesive forces, then adhesive forces, then we have transpiration pull. So these are the factors that helps for water to move against the gravity. So the point is, the first one, we need to look at the absorption. So you need to write about how is water, or how are water molecules absorbed. Then the first one, after absorption by the root hairs, you need to look at the movement of water in the xylem. You need to look at the factors that assist water molecules to move in the xylem. Then from there, from the xylem, we can see that this xylem will make sure that now water reaches the leaves. So that is for the mechanism involved in the movement of water molecules from the soil up to the leaves in a plant. Then for B, so what we can share for B is explain the use of water in plants. So what is the use? Why do plants need water? So the first one is for the process of photosynthesis. So water is needed for photosynthesis. So you explain about photosynthesis. Then the second one, we'll look at cooling. Cooling, we'll look at in terms of in seasons where there is high temperature. So the temperature of a plant must also be maintained. We don't want a high temperature. We also don't want a low temperature. Why? Because even in a plant, we still have enzymes, and we know that enzymes require a favorable temperature. So if the temperature is too high, water must help the temperature of a plant to remain at a normal point. So just look at it, you explain about photosynthesis and cooling, you'll be able to get at least that 3 marks. Then for question C, explain how a leaf is adapted to prevention of excess water loss. The first one, Some of the leaves have a thick wax cuticle layer. So what this layer does, it reduces the water loss. Then some of these plants, the way they are created are, they shed their leaves. They shed their leaves. So the reason why, like in seasons where there is it's not rain season, you'd find that the most of the plants shed their leaves too much. So the reason behind why most of the leaves are shed is to reduce the process of transpiration, and we know that transpiration is the process that makes the water to be lost through the plant. So if the transpiration process or the loss of water occurs mostly in leaves. So if most of the leaves are being shed, therefore the process of transpiration reduces. If the process of transpiration reduces, then we have now, at least we've prevented the excessive water loss. Okay, so let's look at question 8a. Describe the functions of the first one, forebrain. So forebrain is where we have the collection of parts like cerebrum. Now cerebrum is the part that is considered to be the largest. Then it has two hemispheres. There is the right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere. Now the main function of cerebrum, it controls the intelligence. Then the second one, language. If you move from one place to another where there is a new language, so whenever you are learning a new language, cerebrum is responsible. Also memory, how good are you with storing stuff, memory. Then also consciousness. Then the other part that is associated with the forebrain, we have hypothalamus. So one of the functions for hypothalamus, it controls pituitary gland. We know during the secretion of antidiuretic hormone, this is controlled. Then the other function for hypothalamus, it controls the temperature. Then apart from temperature, hunger and thirst. So these are the functions that you can give here. Then for hindbrain, we are looking at the first one, cerebellum. And we know that cerebellum is responsible for learned activities and also activities that requires balancing. Activities like the first one, we have dancing. Then we have playing musical instruments. Then apart from this, like activities like jumping, so any activity that requires balance is controlled by cerebellum, and cerebellum is found under hindbrain. Then the other structure that is found in hindbrain is we have medulla oblongata. Now medulla oblongata controls activities like the first one, swallowing. Then apart from swallowing, coughing. Then we have sneezing. Then heart rate, all those, even blood vessel diameter, because the diameter of blood vessels changes depends on the temperature. Like we have vasodilation, we also have vasoconstriction. So that changes and it's automatic, it's controlled by the medulla oblongata. Then for question B, describe the effects of abuse of drugs on the nervous system. Now, what is drug abuse? So drug abuse is not overusing of a drug, no. Drug abuse is the misuse of a drug, using a drug for the purpose it was not made for. So now, what is the negative impact of using the drug for the purpose it was not made for? The first one, to some people, like maybe if you look at alcohol, to some people, they become so active. So it makes them to become so active. Then to some people, they become slow. Their activity becomes slow. To some, thinking becomes slow. Walking becomes slow. Even to an extent where even talking is also slow. So these are negative impact of drugs. Then for question C, explain the effects of tetanus infection in human beings. So if you look at tetanus, tetanus is an infection caused by a bacterium. So the bacterium that causes the tetanus is what we call Clostridium. Then Clostridium tetani, something like this. Now, what is the negative of this infection? So the infection is that when these bacteria enters the body, they produce toxin that causes painful muscle. So it has to do with the muscle pain. So that is the effect, muscle pain. Okay, so let's move on to question 9. Explain the meaning of the term osmoregulation. So osmoregulation, we can say is the process of controlling water and salt concentration. So if you look at the process by which now the body, or the changes that occurs in the body, so that the salt ions, even water molecules, are being balanced, is what we call osmoregulation. Now, let's look at question B. How does the skin regulate the body temperature on a cold day? So first, we need to look at what is the normal body temperature. So the normal body temperature is around 37 degrees Celsius. So if it is cold, the body must make some changes to make sure that the body temperature remains at 37 degrees Celsius. So now, how are these changes? So during or on a cold day, there will be what we call vasoconstriction. So here we are going to have vasoconstriction. So what is this vasoconstriction? So vasoconstriction is just the process where the blood vessel becomes smaller in size. So the blood vessel becomes smaller in size. And why is this important? So the reason why they are becoming smaller in size, so that the heat loss reduces. Since it's cold, we don't want to lose too much heat. So the point or the importance of vasoconstriction is just for blood vessels to become smaller. Then the importance of blood vessels becoming smaller is to reduce the heat loss. Then if the heat that is being lost is reduced, then the temperature is able to remain at 37 degrees Celsius. Because if we lose too much heat and it's cold, then the temperature will now drop down. And what is the negative of a lower temperature? So the enzymes now will be inactive, they won't operate. And we know that without the enzyme, there is no life in living organisms. Then for hot day, the opposite is now true. Here we are going to have vasodilation. So vasodilation is where now the blood vessel becomes larger. So becomes larger in size. Why? To allow, so here is just to allow more heat loss. Since there is too much heat, we want to allow more heat to be lost. And why do we need such a point? Because of if we have excess heat, the temperature will rise above normal. And we know that if the temperature rises above normal, there will be a bad or a negative effect of enzymes may be denatured. And if enzymes are denatured, then we know that life will not be possible. So these two changes, vasoconstriction and vasodilation, are there to maintain or to make sure that the temperature stays normal. So under if you look at during the cold day, we said there will be vasoconstriction. So here the arteries, they need to constrict, they need to contract to become smaller in size. Then the muscles must shiver. Then the other thing that we need to know here is the adrenal medulla glands increases adrenaline secretion. Why? So that the heat loss reduces and heat production is increased. So when the heat loss is reduced and we have heat production increment, then we are expecting the temperature not to go down but to remain at a constant. So the opposite of what I've said is also true for vasodilation. Here we are going to see that the arteries will become larger in size. Then sweat glands produces more sweat. Then from there we are going to have heat loss is increased, lowering the temperature. So that is what we can say or we can share for that one. Now let's look at the last question here. So the last question here, we are just looking at the undesirable effects of pollution. So what is pollution? Pollution is just the process of ways by which we make the environment or our surrounding unsafe for life. So what are the undesirable effects of pollution? So here, the first one is we may have water contamination or water pollution. So what is the effect of water pollution? We know that we may have diseases. We may have diseases. So what diseases can be caused by this? So let's say if we allow sewage includes always, then if we allow such materials to go into a water body, so we may find it that there will be a bacteria that may develop. And we know that a bacterium is considered to be a pathogen. And we know the pathogen, we said, is any microorganism that has the ability to cause infection. Then the other undesirable effect of pollution, it may give us air pollution. So now for air pollution, we know the diseases that may result because of air pollution. We may have diseases like we have most of inhalation diseases, like we know like coughing, sneezing, those can be undesirable effects. Then the other one, for this one, the air pollution or polluting the air may cause global warming is also a negative. Then also ozone depletion. Then sometimes it may cause acidic rain. Like in chemistry, we say if we let too much of sulfur dioxide to escape into the atmosphere, that may result in acidic rain. And you know the impact of acidic rain, it may cause or make the plants to die. And without plants, life is not possible on Earth. Why? Because the plants are producers. We need plants to survive. Because whatever food or nutrients that we get, most of those, they are produced by the plants. Then if you look at land, the undesirable effect of land. If we contaminate land, the negative effect of land may cause like activities that such as farming to go down. And we know that without farming, also we are not going to have food production. Then also may lead to look at the shifting of organism, because there are some organisms that lives on land, organisms like animals, like where if we have like activities like mining may cause what we call land degradation, and we know that one may make the organisms that lives on that area to move to another area. So that is also another effect there. Then for B, suggest the measures that could be taken to prevent pollution. So let's look at the first one, water pollution. So if we want to reduce water pollution, what are we supposed to do? So the first one, we can make sure that we treat sewage water before releasing it into streams. Then the other one, for farmers, make sure as you apply fertilizers or chemicals, make sure you use, or they are encouraged to use, organic fertilizers, because we know that for artificial it may cause what we call eutrophication. Then for like garbage, waste products, especially those that we use in our homes, garbage can also be used to make compounds manure. If we take advantage of those and make those into compounds manure, it may protect the land pollution. Then also for other activities, like we know that those that uses the fire for burning charcoal, then gas stove, reduce on that. So we need to like educate and depend too much on using stoves that does not produce too much gases. So these are some of the use that we can use to alleviate problems like pollution. So this is what I can share with you guys on this one. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.